All right, this is the Ascension of Babylon. What we do is we talk about the occult, we talk about spiritual self-development. If that is your thing, absolutely subscribe, hit that like button, and you can even click the notification bell so you get notified whenever I'm posting. I will be posting quite frequently. And what we're going to be talking about in this video is the Antichrist energy, how that energy is currently manifesting in the world now, and how this energy is actually connected to the Christ energy. So most people are programmed in a way to think that things are separate, to think that everything's not one thing at its core, and to think things like the Antichrist and the Christ energy don't actually work together. But that's like saying that the negative aspect of a battery doesn't work in harmony with the positive. We need both sides to create power. So the Antichrist is a manifestation of the negative, when the Christ is a manifestation of the positive. So the Antichrist energy is a very significant evolutionary energy that shows up in a collective of people. A lot of the time, it's going to be, people that have a lot of influence over political affairs and, world leaders and stuff like that on our planet. And these are souls that are choosing to play a role. Before they even come here, they decide to do this, to play a role as a divine catalyst for the collective. And the way this kind of plays out is these souls will incarnate in family circumstances and, in bloodlines, to where they go through things and go through a kind of conditioning that makes them more narcissistic and makes them more sociopathic, a lot of times as well psychopathic in nature. And this causes them to behave in a certain way, which is oftentimes going to be very controlling and oppressive and abusive towards the collective consciousness. And this is actually setting the stage for a deeper remembrance within the collective of what it truly is. And it's providing this evolutionary tension that the world at large actually needs to experience to build a deeper connection with the source consciousness and to let go of the illusions that it's been hanging on to and that it's identifying with and attaching to, that are going to keep it from experiencing what some people like to call the Christ consciousness or the Christ energy. Christ, whether he existed or not, we could look at Christ as more so of an archetype representing the source energy in humankind, in every single one of us. And when we look at the journey of Jesus, it represents the things that we go through to connect with the source consciousness and funnel that energy into the human experience. The Antichrist provides the contrast necessary for us to appreciate that process, and it provides the evolutionary tension and catalyst that we need to actually activate that energy within ourselves, which is more so simply a remembrance of what we always were. So there are specific figures on our planet right now that are actually embodying this Antichrist energy to provide this contrast that we need to evolve as a collective. And a major figure within this Antichrist energy is actually going to be Donald Trump. And we can even take things that are written in the book of Revelations, and we can see how they parallel directly to Donald Trump. And that is something that I'm going to get into a little bit later. But going back to the Antichrist energy, this is going to be a soul group a lot of the time, but it's not limited to, are going to be souls that incarnate as very powerful political figures and people of that nature. And their normal conditioned behavior is usually going to be in a way that's a little more narcissistic and a little more sociopathic, to where they want to control the collective. and that need to be in control is going to manifest as a catalyst. So Donald Trump, right? When we look at the things that he's doing, he's creating a lot of catalyst, which is actually by a much deeper design. He's probably not conscious of everything, but by a much deeper design is meant to collapse the systems of the old world and to collapse the identity construct of the average person, so we can move into a new identity and we can move into a new world. But, if you understand the nature of how reality works, for anything to come into existence, for anything to experience growth, for anything to come into manifestation, there has to be a death cycle that takes place for that rebirth to actually take place as well. So this antichrist energy, which is very prominent in Donald Trump, he's like a container for that energy. This energy is setting the stage for that rebirth. And we can look in the book of Revelations, we can see how there's a lot of death, there's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of catalyst that takes place. But then in the end of Revelations, there's this concept of rebirth that is conventionally conveyed as, Jesus basically coming back. And I might be wrong, but I believe that he may even come back riding a horse. Although I think the interpretations of that can vary. Can vary. But regardless, there's very deep symbolism within the book of Revelations when we look at, beyond the religious perspective and beyond the conditioning that makes people have a certain idea about what that means. When we look beyond that, we can actually see that the book of Revelations is taking place in real time right now, and this antichrist energy is very prominent within the collective, and it's actually providing the catalyst needed for that later positive to manifest. And that's why we have figures like Donald Trump who are doing what they are doing, ushering forth this catalyst. And once again, I'm not saying he's conscious of it. He might not want to benefit anyone, who knows. But just because he's an unconscious container for this energy, and because on a deeper soul level, he incarnated to play this catalytic role, whether he intends it to or not, or whether he wants it to or not, this is the role that he plays. It's going to ultimately benefit humanity. And we are all signing up to have this experience. We are all signing up to watch all of the dominoes fall and to also play a role ourselves in this new world coming into manifestation. And the way I do this is, I'm making content like this and helping you become aware of what is happening and helping you see through the veil rather than thinking this is a bad thing. And there are, certain powers that be that want to program you into that way of thinking. They don't want you to actually be able to extract the positive from the negative, but the positive is going to come with the negative, regardless. There's nothing that they can necessarily do about it. In many ways, this is fate, and this is the destiny of the collective to eventually merge the common clay with divine consciousness. And going back to the book of Revelations, this is what it's all about, but it's the Antichrist that provides the contrast necessary for the Christ energy to be active and to come about. It is the negative polarity that provides the evolutionary tension for the positive polarity to be seen and to be experienced within the self. And both of these polarities within the self actually have to be balanced. Just like, once again, a battery, imagine trying to plug a battery that has only positive or only negative. Imagine cutting the battery in half and then putting it in a radio. That handheld radio is not going to work, right? So it's the same thing. We're seeing the negative and we're also seeing the positive. The book of Revelations is all about seeing these polarities manifest in different ways. So the Antichrist plays such an important role in the evolution of the collective consciousness. And now we're going to be talking about the book of Revelations a little bit and getting into some of that symbolism. And then I'm going to be linking it to a major container for this, negative polarity energy, or, this Antichrist energy being Donald Trump. So in the book of Revelations, there's this seven-headed beast that appears, and a figure known as Babylon is riding the beast. Now, the beast, or the number of the beast, and also associated with the Antichrist figure, is going to be 666. But we're going to get into that a little bit down the line in the video. So there's this beast that appears. It has 7 heads, and there's one of the heads actually takes a fatal blow. And I believe this head to actually be Donald Trump. Not only did Donald Trump, take a serious blow to his campaign and his ability to be president, because, he's a convicted felon and he was charged with all of those different counts, 34 of them, which we're going to get into what that means as well. But aside from that, Donald Trump also almost lost his life. There was someone that took a shot at Donald Trump, and that was very close to hitting his head. It grazed his ear. That's also, almost taking that fatal blow. So we have the person who tried to assassinate him, and we also have his legal situation. We can absolutely interpret it in that way. So we can kind of see how Donald Trump is a container for this Antichrist energy. Now, we're going to get into Babalon and the Babalon workings. So the Babalon workings were rituals that were inspired by Thelema and the teachings of Aleister Crowley that were performed by L. Ron Hubbard, so he was associated with Scientology, and Jack Parsons, who was an occultist and a rocket scientist, essentially. A couple of months after they believed that these workings were successful, and the intention of these workings was to bring about the physical manifestation of Babalon, a couple of months after that, guess who was born on a friggin' blood moon, which is also associated with the goddess Babalon? Donald Trump. And I can clearly see I work with this energy, and I even channel it through my body and have many profound experiences with it. We can see, or I can see at least, and I'm explaining to you, we can see how this energy of Babalon actually follows Donald Trump. Now let's get into that. Babalon is associated with the number 7. And when we add up the number of counts that Donald Trump was, I believe the word is indicted on, it equals 34, and 34 equals 7, and the date that he was actually convicted also equals 7. And in my experience working with Babalon, the number 7 will start showing up a lot of the time when the presence of Babalon is more solidified in my life experience, or maybe when this force is trying to communicate with me. Now, the goddess Babalon is associated and known to actually channel through women who are a little more open sexually. And Stormy Williams was the main witness in the case against Donald Trump. And Stormy Williams is an adult film star, which absolutely kind of fits that archetype of how the goddess Babalon would conventionally show up. Now, Babalon in Revelations is this woman who is known to ride the beast. And in relation to Donald Trump, this represents kind of how this energy, essentially is in a deep association with Donald Trump. And Babalon is in association with the apocalypse, which Donald Trump is certainly a major part of, and is a major influencing figure of and is a symbol of this collective apocalypse as well. And when we're actually working with Babalon on a personal level, she will bring you through your own inner apocalypse to where the illusions that you were very attached to come crashing down. So you can actually go through this death cycle to go through a rebirth and to connect with the source energy and then to experience that and to channel that into the human experience just by being your authentic self. But there has to be this death that takes place. Donald Trump is a container for this very catalytic energy that is initiating a mass collective ego death. And we can see how the energy of Babalon also, is very directly associated with Donald Trump. So it's very likely that Donald Trump, before he even incarnated here, chose to play this role. Once again, I'm not saying he's conscious of any of this, but whether he's conscious of it or not, he is being driven to play this role as a divine catalyst to bring an apocalypse to the old world so we can experience a new world where we're able to connect with the source energy, to where the average person who is stuck in illusions goes through what they need to go through to then be more so open to experiencing the source energy and going through a remembrance that this is what they always actually were. The goddess Babalon is directly associated with this process, and I'm willing to think that Donald Trump has a deeper soul connection with this force, which is why this force kind of, we can see the energetic footprint of Babalon in the life of Donald Trump. And once again, this is whether he's aware of it or not, but he doesn't have to be aware of it to be a container for this antichrist energy, which is meant to initiate this mass collective ego death to bring about a mass collective rebirth. So with all of that being said, I absolutely think that Donald Trump is a container unconsciously for the energetic current of the goddess Babalon. And there's a lot of demonization when it comes to Babalon. And there are certain people in control of our planetary matrix that want to program the idea that Babalon is bad and that you need to fear this force so that you don't embrace this current of energy in a healthy way. But this is actually a current of energy that truly is meant to benefit humanity. This is in many ways, a very ancient aspect of ourselves that we are remembering that we are connected to. Now, the reason why Donald Trump is acting in the way he, essentially does, even though on a deeper level he's playing the role that he needs to play, the reason why he's acting in the way that he does isn't because Babalon wants him to, act in a sociopathic or maybe a way that's narcissistic necessarily, but it's because he's not integrating that current of energy, which on a subconscious, unconscious level, he is a container for. But the way things work is regardless, everything works for us, and there are people that need to play these roles of being very unintegrated, which causes them to be like this major divine catalyst, and that is absolutely what Donald Trump is doing. Now, let's talk about the mark of the beast, which is the number 666. So in Gematria, 666 breaks down to 18 and then breaks down to the number 9. 9 represents completion. It represents beginnings and it represents endings. It represents endings and it represents beginnings. It represents life and it represents death. And it also, in Kabbalah, it represents Yesod, which is the foundation. So this very catalytic current of energy, the Antichrist energy, it comes into the world to break down the faulty foundation so we can learn to build a foundation that's in resonance with who we really are, rather than being in resonance with the illusions and the limiting beliefs and the false identities that most human beings today are identified with being them. So there needs to be this healthy catalyst that comes into the world that shakes up that foundation so we can build a healthier, more solid foundation and then remember who and what we actually are. The apocalypse that's depicted in the book of Revelations is all about us shifting into a different timeline. But in order to shift into a different timeline, we have to be able to release what is anchoring us to the old timeline. And this Antichrist energy plays a very important role of helping us to release what is anchoring us to the old timeline. So Donald Trump is a figure that evokes a lot of fear and a lot of inner chaos in people. But that fear and that inner chaos is what was actually already there. An experience can't be imposed on you if you're not already in resonance with whatever that experience is. Because the truth that a lot of people don't understand is we're not a victim to reality and it's not happening to us, but we're the creator of everything that we experience, everything that we have experienced, and everything that we will experience. And we're creating reality from our overall energetic resonance. And a lot of times we have these traumas that are stored in our body and our energetic field that we're heavily in avoidance to. So Donald Trump is a figure that carries this very catalytic current of energy inside of him that brings people into those traumas that they've been running away from so they can surface it in the form of the heavy emotions that a lot of people feel towards Donald Trump. And by feeling them, this gives the person or people the opportunity to actually release those energies from their body and to release those energies from their energetic field so they can move into that higher evolutionary timeline. It's those lower frequency trauma-based, suppressed energetic resonances that are keeping the average person in the old timeline. And the Antichrist is a figure who burns away everything that is anchoring the collective to that old timeline. And this is how the Antichrist sets the stage for the Christ energy to become much more active within the collective. We have the positive and we have the negative, and together they create power. And that power is the collective going through a remembrance of what it really is to connect with the source energy that it always was, and then to express that to the world in a new world, in a new timeline. So this is the role that the Antichrist plays. It, brings a lot of death energy into the world. It brings catalyst. It acts as a major trigger to surface suppressed negative energies that are keeping the collective anchored in the old world. And the Antichrist plays this role of creating such a pattern interruption within the system that it creates this collapse. And this sets the stage for us to move into a different timeline. So the Antichrist is typically seen as evil, is typically seen as a figure that's bad and is wrong and we need to be afraid of, and is typically seen from a religious programming type of lens, or what I like to call dualistic programming. But this is a very necessary force, and the fact that this energy is showing up within figures like Donald Trump is a really good sign that the old world is collapsing and we're moving into a completely different timeline. And I think that's where I'm going to end this video. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate every single one of you. I was certainly very excited to, share this information with all of you. And I will catch you in the next video. Thank you.